Hello and welcome back to A Little Wilder. On this video I'm continuing on with my February nature journal pages, and I have made a bit of progress, and I haven't filmed some of it, but I'm going to talk you through what I've done so far, and then I've also got a little how-to video to show you as well. So a quick flip through of where we're at with the 2026 nature journal. January pages, and then February, and I've started a different ink there. I'm using the Loch Ness by Tom's Studio, and I'm going to carry on working on this page to look for some rowan trees. Then we have the lovely wildflower spread that I did on the last video, if you want to check that one out. And then here is the finished highlights page. So as mentioned on the last video, I was going to focus on Avocet and Otter, and unfortunately I had some technical issues and I didn't film this. However, I am now going to dive into a little how-to for you, so enjoy. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to draw and paint your own Avocet. This is the way that I do it, and this technique can be used for any birds or plant life, anything really at all. But today we're going to focus on how to draw and paint an Avocet. Here's one I've done in my perpetual nature journal, and I've also got one in my 2026 nature journal here as well. So this one I used, my reference image was this. You can actually see I've flipped it about so it's a bit more pleasing to the eye as the face is heading into the page. It's a little bit more pleasing on the eye for the composition. This is a photo taken by Ron Thomas, who's a volunteer at the nature reserve that I work at. He's very kindly given me permission to use it for my nature journal classes that I do at the nature reserve, and also for use in my nature journal and for use on this video as well. I'll link a website for Ron below. So all you need for this workshop or little tutorial is some watercolor paper or any type of paper. And I like to use a hot press paper to make it smooth. There's some watercolour papers that are quite bumpy, and that's more cold press, but I like a smooth paper. You need a reference image, watercolour paints, that's what we'll be using today. I have a large Winsor & Newton palette because I have no patience for mixing colours. I would rather them just be all set out. We'll only be using actually a very small selection of colours today anyway. We'll have burnt umber, I do believe, a yellow ochre, Payne's grey, and ultramarine. That's all you need, 4 colours. And we'll also need a pencil and an eraser. And I'm actually going to use 2 different paintbrushes today. I'm going to use a smaller, finer one. I've also got a fatter paintbrush here as well. This is one that I got from Jackson's. It's a Raven 10. So I'm going to use that one. And I've also got, a little glass of water for my watercolours. And I've got my trusty bit of kitchen paper there as well, for brushing off my brush, to take a bit of that. If you've got a bit of excess water, get that off there. So I think that's all we need, and we are ready to start off. I'm going to be using the instructions that I've created for my my little nature journaling class that I did at the nature reserve. So it's going to kind of look a bit like that. Brilliant. Let's crack on. Right, the first thing we're going to do then is shape it out. So if you're going to use your reference image, you can kind of pick out some shapes from it. It's kind of your central round bit for its body. You've got your head over here as well, so then this can be a bit more of an oval. Its neck, another little oval there, and then its head, another oval. Got a little bit of bum sticking out, tail, and then you've got its beak. And always have a little look at where its eye is placed and then where the beak is placed in connection to that eye, and then its legs. So thinking about that, so I'm going to go first of all with its head. Put that in. Then its neck. And then its round body. Oval that. And then we've got that kind of tail. Now if I'm looking at where to place its eye, if I put my eye here, I know the kind of central part of the beak follows that line down. There's a bit of a curve there with the beak as well. I can always play around with this if I feel like that's too tilted up. Maybe it needs to come a bit tilted down a little bit more. That's probably a bit better. And I might even from this point try and just have a little think about where I'm going to put the legs. That one's kind of halfway around its body, so about there. Got a little bit of a tilt to it. There's a bit of a knee there, a bit of a knee there. And then once you've kind of got your shapes in and you think, okay, you can start to flesh it out. So we've shaped it out and now we're going to flesh it out. So I'm going to kind of, always looking at your reference image, start from where you've got your eye in maybe, and then you can start to think about where that beak is coming into the head and looking at the shape of its head. Kind of comes up. It flattens out slightly with a slight curve. And then that's where that beak starts, a little bit higher up. But here I'm going to bring it in nicely under its, kind of its chin. Definitely got a little bit of a indent here and an indent here. So it goes out a little bit on its neck. And then again here. Comes in a little bit before it goes out for the belly. You can see I'm not being too precious. I'm using some of the larger strokes with the brush. With the brush? No, it's a pencil. And here if we're looking back at the neck again, when it gets to about the nape, about here you'd say where that black would stop. It's going upwards, and then there's a definite little rise here, and then it's going up and over. Its back, nice curved back. And then it's going out into that tail. There's a few little black feathers here. So I'm just going to do a little squiggly line there just to show that there's going to be that. And then it comes all the way up here. Brilliant. Okay. Now back to this beak. It's quite a thin beak. So I'm just going to pencil that in a little bit. It gets thinner as it goes along to that little curve.
Lovely. Might do a bit more penciling in of these legs as well. I've just noticed these legs coming into the water, probably got too much of a gap there in the distance. So I can always put in a little bit of a line for the water to give myself a little bit of a reference. So although this one's coming into the water, this is the one that's closest to me. So let's draw in a little bit more. I love the blue of an Avocet's legs. It's fantastic. So this is probably fine here. But that probably needs to extend a little bit further down into the water. Not as far, but a little bit. And just penciling in a little bit of suggestion of a ripple in the water around those legs. Of course, we've also got the little drip coming off its beak here, so I'll draw that in a little bit. And we'll even try and draw in a bit of the reflection a little bit later on as well. Now, if you got it on the computer, say, you might be able to zoom in and get a little bit closer to the eye. Now, I know that that little eye is actually surrounded by a little bit of a lighter shade, a little bit of a lighter colour. Let's see if one of my previous images have captured that, my previous paintings. So this previous painting has got that little bit of a lighter colour around the eye. There's also a nice little dab of white in there, which just helps bring the eyes to life. It's a little bit of reflective quality. So, slightly oval shaped eyes as well. So I might just take that little eye back a little bit so I can pencil it in again. Again, referencing that image to see where that eye sits in relation to the beak. Penciling it in. Just light pencil for that little surrounding area of light colour. And I'm going to also kind of start now to pencil in where I want this dark feathers to be. So it cuts through the eye, quite close to the lower part of the eye, comes onto the back of the neck, nape of the neck here, and comes down a bit. Now, I don't have to be too precious with my pencil because, I forgot one thing that we're going to need, and that is a fine liner. So once we've penciled, we go in with a fine liner. Silly me. So, back to this. So we've done some feathers for the nape there. And then we're also going to have a little look at this section for the wing. We kind of want to get that penciled in. So again, shape it out. And I've got that circle that I drew in earlier. I'm going to use that to help me shape it out. This wing's kind of like a teardrop, very oval kind of shape. So let's get that in. Comes about midway on the body. Look where that comes down here. So I want it to kind of go there, and then it kind of comes down like a bit of a teardrop. Lovely, get that in. In fact, it probably needs to come a little bit further out. Like that. I've also got this quite strong line here as well. I'm going to pencil that in. We've also got a little bit of feathers here on the other side, so I'll kind of come to about there. And we've also got this other little bit of shoulder over there, which is a little bit of a darker colour. So I'll kind of put that in as well. And onto that wing with my pencil, I'm just kind of mapping out where I want the dark colours to sit. And then we've got a little bit of texture. So we can refine this a little bit more. We can, you know, rub bits out, make our markings a little bit more neater. If you need that before you put in your fine liner, just to help a little bit with the where you're going to put your fine liner. I'm probably confident enough to go straight in with my fine liner at this point. I might just pop in my little drip from its beak here as well. So using that line of where I've got the water.
I use a fine liner pen, which is a 0.2. I like it to be a nice and thin line. I'll show you up here. And I like to do this way as well because it's a bit like painting by numbers. Once you've got your outline in, you can just fill in the areas then with your paint. So using the fine liner, I'm just going to go over the pencil lines for the bits that I want to keep. And I tend to use quite small stroke motions instead of it being like big blocks of colour, you know, just nice gentle. And I find as well doing that shorter, lighter motion. You can see I'm turning, sometimes I turn my page as I'm going. That, yeah, so if you're doing like the shorter little strokes, it helps with feathers, you know, you're suggesting that it's feathers, the texture of feathers. It's always the hardest bit, isn't it, trying to do a straight line. Especially here for the belly, the feathers are a lot more textured going up to its tail. Now on its tail, it definitely has this quite defined little 3 feathers sticking out. So I definitely want to kind of get those in. A little bit more texture. On its belly, and maybe around its neck as well. Some texture here. Oh, let's get that eye in. Right, okay. So let's get those leggies put in. Right, so then what we need to do is rub out all of our pencil markings, and just make sure that you've given your fine liner a little bit of time to dry as well, because you can sometimes smudge it when you rub it out. You can either use an eraser like this or a putty rubber, which is looking a bit sad for itself. So we're gonna rub out all of those pencil marks. And you might find at this stage as well that you need to add more pen in places, and that's all good too. So on to the next stage then, is we're going to get some watercolour onto this. So Payne's Grey, ultramarine, burnt umber and yellow ochre. 4 colours, nice and simple. And the rules that I follow I say rules, but the rules that I follow when I do watercolour is work light to dark and let your layers dry. That's of course if you don't want it to do that bleeding and blooming like watercolours do, which is very, very beautiful technique to use. Not really my style, so I like to let the layers dry. I'm also a very impatient artist, I have come to realise. So this is the way that I do it, and I feel like it's quite a nice, quick way of doing it. So given that we want to do our lightest colours first, we could either start with a little bit of the lighter grayer areas of a bit of shading, or we could start off with this very light brown areas. So I'm going to start off by doing the light brown, which I'm going to do with the yellow ochre. We can always build up, make it darker, change the colour if we don't like it. That's absolutely fine. I'm going to see how I go with this big fat brush. I might change it to the thinner one. What's quite nice about this is it does have quite a fine tip, but we'll see how I go. I'm still getting used to this as well. So I'm going to put my reference image here, and I'm going to drop in that light yellow ochre around the tail feathers, the wing feathers here, and also this little patch around the eye needs a little bit of light colour, and I can see a little bit more of this ochre tone on its breast there as well, so I'll drop some in there. So yellow ochre. And the thing about watercolours, the darker the colour is more paint on your brush. If you add more water, you get a lighter colour. Now I've just got water on my brush. If I pull that down, you'll see it's a lighter colour. So if I want a dark, quite dark, thick, put a lot of paint on your brush. I obviously want it to be quite a light colour. So if I use a lot of water on my brush, I can get that quite light. It's always handy to have like a swatching card or something, just to help get the consistency that you want. And you can always, if you put a little bit too much on, you can always pull it back by using a little bit of the kitchen paper, or a little bit more water on there to pull it back. And again, that kind of like stroking motion with the paintbrush just gives that impression of feathers and texture. I'm going to do the same now with the Payne's Grey. I'm going to use quite a lot of water with the Payne's Grey, because I want it to be very light. Yeah. Okay, so there I've got my lightest colours done. And now what we might want to do is put in a bit of the darker brown, a bit of burnt umber for this bit here. Maybe going with that next, and maybe the ultramarine next as well for its legs. I'm going to do the water bit all in one go a little bit later on, and I always leave my eye to last, which is a risky business really, because if you mess it up right at the end, then you know, whoops. Definitely need some darker brown up here. Too much water on my brush there. Take some of that off. I'm just using that quite a dry paintbrush there just to take some off. I think I didn't really let my layers dry well enough there. So I think when you're filming as well, like, I think I make more mistakes when I'm filming. I don't know what it is, but I mean that's realistic as well, isn't it? Is that, you know, you do make mistakes when you're
when you're doing art, and that's okay. And you can use what it's called a lifting technique to fix any mistakes. So get your paintbrush nice and clean in your water, give it a dry, and you can brush away areas that are still wet and just take that layer off. And if you want to add like a little bit of a highlight and lighter tone, you can also use a damp paintbrush to take away the top layer of paint to add a little bit of highlight, which on this one you can kind of see on its forehead here and on its beak. I use that technique to just lift a little bit of the paint off, so that works out quite nice. I think I want to go in again and make this brown a bit darker. More paint on the paintbrush there. I'm using my palette here as well. Let's see. It's definitely going on thicker. Just take off a bit of the excess. Watercolour as well, it does dry lighter than it first goes on. So sometimes you think, oh, I've got the perfect colour there, brilliant. And then it dries and you think, oh, actually, I need to make that a little bit darker. That's it, that's all I needed to do. So once this is dried here, I can do the black. So I'm going to move on to this ultramarine for its legs. I'm going to use my thinner paintbrush as well, just to be extra safe. Let's see. Need it a bit lighter than that colour that I'm getting there. So again, we just use a little bit more water on our paintbrush to achieve a slightly lighter colour. And once this layer has dried, I'll go in again with a slightly heavier mix of the paint on the brush and just get a little bit more of the shadow, a little bit more of the definition in that we can see in the picture. But I want it to dry first. So whilst I'm waiting for that bit to dry, I can move on to the black beak, black head, black parts of the wings as well. I'm going to keep with my thin paintbrush here. It's serving me quite well. Payne's Grey again. I'm going to use my palette. Now I want this to be quite a dark, bold colour. Not too much water on my paintbrush. Definitely missed a little bit of Payne's Grey from this area, so I'm just going to put that a little bit in. So putting the eye in, if you can, try and leave a tiny little smidgen of the white paper to show through for that like reflective bit to make the eye come to life. If, like me, didn't quite manage it, you can use like a white gel pen to put a little dot in afterwards, or maybe a little bit thick white watercolour. That'll do the job as well. I'll do that in a bit when it's dried. I think what I'll do now is just put some more of that darker blue into the legs. Now once that's dry, I'm going to try and do a little bit of this water here. And I might try and do the reflection as well. I might try to pop that in. So if we're going to do the reflection, I think
I should just use my pencil to just pencil it in a little bit. Get a bit of an idea of where I'm gonna put it. So I think what I'm going to do now for the water is using that burnt umber, but really watered down. And I'm going to just go in with a little bit of that. Using quite a lot of water on the brush. It's kind of a bit more like a wash. A bit of ultramarine there, and on the palette I've kind of mixed it with a bit with that burnt umber. Drop that in really light. Bit of that Payne's grey with that ultramarine as well, just to darken it. Okay, let's see if I can bring a little bit of an impression in there that the Avocet is reflected back into the water. So I'm just going to use one of these little gel pens just to get a little bit of reflective dot in the eye. There you go. Just makes it kind of come to life a little bit. I mean, I'm not so amazed and happy with this reflective bit. Water is not my forte, but I'm really quite happy with the Avocet. And for a fairly quick technique with watercolour, there you go. That's how to draw an Avocet. And as I said, this kind of technique can be used for different birds or flowers, whatever it is. You know, it's that shape it out, flesh it out, and then paint it light to dark and let your layers dry in between. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for watching. And please do press the little like button and subscribe if you want to see more. This was my 6th video, so I'm getting there, and I'm just catching up with the months ahead. So I'll see you on the next one. Thanks very much for watching. Bye.